Welcome to Navajo County Connection. I'm your host, Jason Whiting, District 3 Supervisor. We're glad to have you with us here today. We're especially pleased to have our guests that we have, especially coming up on fire season. So we have our Navajo County Emergency Preparedness Manager. What's the title? I got it right?
You got it right.
Catrina Jenkins, and most of you probably know who she is. We're certainly glad to have her here today, and I think we're going to have an interesting conversation. Catrina, for those guests that don't know who you are, do you mind kind of giving a little background as to what your role is and what you do?
Absolutely. Actually, I'm coming up on my 20th anniversary with Navajo County this May. I started out in dispatch and moved over to emergency management about 13 years ago already. So what I am is the emergency manager, and my lucky job is to work with all of our partners, be it first responders, volunteers, community members and organizations, and coordinate how we're going to respond to disasters of natural or man-made types. Like you mentioned, we're coming up on fire season, so this is when we start really hitting the ground running.
Well, thank you, and you do a tremendous job as a supervisor, and I know our whole board really values and appreciates the work that you and your team does. I know that our communities really look to lean on you during those times, and the work that you guys do is greatly appreciated. So you mentioned and talked a little bit about fire season. Obviously, we're getting ready for fire season to start up. Do you mind telling us what's this going to look like this year?
Yeah, so we've got one of our partners that my team and I work with is the National Weather Service, and they put out what they call the Fire Outlook on a monthly basis. This looks at our drought conditions, how much precipitation we have or have had, and then kind of what we're expecting to happen in general terms. So for this year, we're working on a pretty serious drought impact. We're in either extreme or exceedingly extreme drought right now. Those are the two worst on the scale. Last year we had little or no drought at all at this time, so it's not looking good. The possible forecast coming up is that it's going to be drier than normal and potentially warmer than normal. There's always chances for storms. Easter's my favorite quote is, we always get an Easter snowstorm every year. So we'll have little bouts here and there, but the actual amount that we need isn't quite where we want it to be. So we're starting to see those impacts.
Do you know, and if you don't, that's okay, do you know as far as the amount of moisture we had in 2020 compared to where it is right now, like as far as those actual numbers? Or
I don't have the actual numbers in my head, but it is significantly less. We look at things like the energy release components, which is how hot and how dry and how fast fuels will burn if they should catch on fire. And we're okay on those, but we've already seen several spot fires along the roadsides. Just in the last week, we had one on Friday that from 77 from Sholo all the way across I-40 to Joseph City burned several spots along the way, which it's only, early spring yet, and that's pretty soon.
Pretty concerning to have it happening already. And I remember we did have quite a bit of moisture comparatively last year, thank goodness, but this year has been rather dry during the winter season,
unfortunately.
That being said, with that kind of an outlook, what can our homeowners do to prepare for this upcoming fire season?
So glad you asked. So our homeowners are a big part of our community response to wildfires, and what they do directly impacts how our firefighters and our law enforcement are able to manage when and if we do have a fire. I say when because it's more than likely going to happen. It's just we don't know how big, how bad, and when. So homeowners have a critical role in maintaining their property, making sure that they're what we like to call fireways, which is maintaining those grounds, make sure their weeds are picked up and so they don't get to dry out, make sure their landscape is well maintained. It's really easy, and folks should really start thinking about it now. We still have some cold days, but if we're already in this kind of an outlook, we could be in restrictions sooner rather than later, and then the use of certain tools might be restricted. So we really want people to start now, early, so that they're not waiting until the last minute and then can't do what they need to do. So some of the other things they can do is make a home assessment. If they go on the Firewise website, nfpa.org, I believe is the website, and there is a list, and it's a checklist, and they can assess their own home. And it's really simple to do. Things like making sure you have reflective numbers on your to mark your home, making sure your roofs and gutters are clean, decks are clean, things like that.
Why, just curious, why reflective? What does that actually help with then?
So reflective numbers help firefighters and law enforcement find your home quicker if a fire should break out if you're the ground zero, so to speak. They can find that and get to you quicker. It's amazing how many times firefighters have trouble finding a home because it's not well marked, and especially at dark when they're driving and lights are flashing, it makes it easier for them to see.
You talked about clean, thank you for sharing that. It's actually funny you bring that up. I born and raised in the area, left for a period of time for school and otherwise, and then came back. But while I was at school, I had to, everything from delivering pizzas to one of the manufacturing companies I worked for, we delivered, and I became very accustomed to having to look for the numbering, right? To be able to find the home, the address, the whatever. And then moving back up here, growing up, I was always go to the red house, take a right, go to the, and then now, yeah, I come back and people try to give me their address, and it's really hard to find some of the addresses up here. So
it really is.
Yeah, I think it's important that you brought that up. Thank you for sharing that,
Sure.
so that it makes it so that our people who are trying to come and help, our firefighters, our law enforcement, are able to actually find the places they're trying to help at.
Yeah.
So, you also talked about gutters and cleaning those out.
Yeah.
How often would you say? Is that like a time of year that you're supposed to do it, a certain number of times a year? What's the best way to know how to do like your gutters? Is that once a year? When?
That's a great question. How many times should you do it? And once or twice a year is probably really good. You want to make sure though, the part of that makes it so critical is the Ember Awareness, what we like to call Ember Aware. An ember can travel for miles and miles, and just one little ember catches on a dry pine needle that's on your roof. Sorry, but poof. That's what we don't want. So checking that roof, even quarterly, you could have, just take a look from the ground and see if you have a lot of buildup on your roof of pine needles, leaves, because those things do shed, quite often. Springtime is, of course, when we like to get out there and work in our yards because things are blooming and Mother Nature's coming back. So this is a really good time to do it. But fall is also a good time when the trees when the trees are done shedding those leaves, so that you just make sure you're keeping that cleaned off.
So maybe even as much as twice a year,
yeah.
The spring and the fall. Take a look at that. And you used a word, I've heard you used it before, but so our guests understand, Ember Aware. When that term is used, or if the people they're working with use Ember Aware, what does that mean?
Like I said, just making sure that you understand that embers from a fire can travel for miles. So we might have a fire 4 or 5 miles away, but an ember can travel in a breeze and catch a house, a thick of grass, dry grass, weeds on fire. Another part of it is if you are doing a yard cleanup and you choose to burn the piles, make sure that pile is completely out, that you've gotten your permit and done all the right things for that to begin with, but making sure that it's dead out, cold to the touch. One of my favorite stories about this, last year in our neighboring county, in Apache County, Vernon had a fire. The homeowners did everything right. They watched it. They put it out. It was 100% cold. Nothing should have happened. And yet an ember got sparked up by a slight breeze off of that fire, and poof, we had a pretty good sized brush fire off of that. So it's always a concern. We live in the wildland urban interface, so we're always watching that, not just during fire season, but year round.
What a good story, and I'm glad that you shared that. Just the realities around how often we think that we put out a fire, we've done enough, and I've seen, sadly, when I've been out camping or in the forest or doing, where somebody hasn't even done cold to the touch, they just simply walked away from a fire, which clearly isn't the desired outcome. So What else can our community members do?
You know, making sure, like we said, the roofs and gutters, eaves, all of those are cleaned off. Then moving that wood pile. A lot of people don't realize when they move that wood pile close to the house in the wintertime, they should really pick it up and move it away from the house for the summertime so that it's not such a big threat. Making sure their decks are cleaned and well maintained and screened off underneath so that embers can't get under there, and using that wire mesh stuff underneath your decks is a really good way to take care of that as well. Also checking your window screens, making sure they're in good repair because you don't want an ember to get through a hole. Also trimming up the ladder fuels, what we call ladder fuels that are lower to the ground and shouldn't be. You want to make sure that they're at a good height. And again, all of the good information can be found on the NFPA FireWise website on how high up to trim and how far out. And we don't want people to go clear their property. We just want it cleaned up.
So let's talk about, and thank you for sharing that. That should help some of our community members to prepare for the upcoming fire season. Obviously, we hope that nothing happens, but every year we know that it's always a potential. And so, talk to us about the Ready Set program, or the Ready Set Go program.
Yes.
That's a mouthful. It's hard to say, but Ready Set Go program. All right.
So Ready Set Go is a statewide program. All 15 counties, we're really proud of this. All 15 counties have incorporated this language when it comes to responding to, preparing for and responding to disasters and emergencies. So ready is being ready, you know, making sure you have a kit, you know, you've talked to your family and friends, you know what's going to happen. Be ready. And then we move into the set phase. So if something is happening, for example, since we're talking fire, we'll use that. A fire's kicked up and you're kind of like paying more attention and getting good information from a vetted source. We always want that vetted source and not the rumor mill, because we do have some, you know, occasions where it's not always accurate. And just really making sure you're prepared to go when we say go. And we'll kick out a message on our alert system called Ready Navajo County. And if you haven't signed up for that, people can sign up either by clicking the join now on our social media page. We have a Facebook page.
What's the Facebook page? Do you mind sharing with us?
Absolutely. Navajo County Emergency Management and Preparedness is our Facebook page. Or you can go to our county website, which is navajocountyaz.gov/ready. That will take you directly to the page that will get you to the alert system. So we always recommend people get signed up. You can tell us how you want to get notified. It's super easy. If you move, you just call me and I'll take you out. And, you know, that's all there is to it.
Thank you for sharing that. That's proven to be a very valuable system. I know that sometimes wearing my hat as a supervisor, there's times that we have to get information out quickly. Obviously, it's only for emergency purposes, but where that's able to be utilized, and very quickly it goes throughout the community. Now wearing my other hat as a citizen that lives, you know, in the communities, it's really nice when it's a different department, it's a different area, but that same system works and it kicks up. I'll get a text, I'll get a phone call, I'll get different things that notify me of something that's important, that's urgent, that's going on, and I need to be aware of it right now. And so the more people that are signed up for it, the more impact that we're able to have, and quickly. So I know that when we had our last fire, the Cedar fire, we had that up and running, did we not?
We did.
And there was a lot of, it's interesting, you talked earlier about the rumor mill, and there were so many different things that hearsay that people would want to, and we kept trying to direct them to one place to get all the information, to be able to be kept up to date. How important it was that you brought that up, that during times of emergency, find the trusted source, stick to the trusted source, and stay away from the conversations around the water cooler. I really appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah. And then talking about Ready Navajo County, great thing. So tell us about the other parts, set and go, and how it all works.
So Ready, like I said before, have a kit. You know, you want to have at least 72 hours worth of food, water, and materials for you, your pet, your kids to get by on. That's a minimum. 7 days is actually preferable. We may not always be able, like if it's a winter storm, we may not be able to get to you right away if it's that bad. In 2010, we had a pretty serious disaster happen up here. Several days worth of snow, feet of snow all across northern Arizona. So it wasn't just our White Mountains, it was the entire northern half of the state that was impacted. Well, that takes a lot of resources away from just here. And we do the best that we can, but we want our communities to be resilient and be able to stand up on their own as much as possible. And the more we can do that, the better off we will be, and we'll be able to recover that much faster when something does happen. So that's the part about being ready that I'm passionate about, is the more we're ready for anything that comes, whether it's a hazardous materials spill or a fire or a flood, the better off our communities will be in the end run.
So you're saying you want to have an experience like some of the things that very unfortunately have gone on in Texas. I know it's been difficult for them during this this cold season,
yes.
And they've had some real tragedies that occurred. So hopefully people are able to get ready, as you suggested.
Yeah,
so.
and one of the messages that I really want to make sure everybody understands is there's more than one type of disaster. We tend to focus a lot on fire, and that's of course one of our biggest, because we've had the two biggest fires in the state in our backyard.
Right.
So I'm not discounting that at all, but there are other disasters that could happen, just like the winter storms in Texas. Hazardous material spills. We have trucks, tanker trucks that come up here all the time, driving back and forth up the mountain. We have along the I-40 corridor, we have railroads, stuff like that. So we definitely have the ability to prepare ourselves and our families to make sure that we're okay when that stuff does happen.
Excellent, well said. How about the set part? The
set part. So like I said, when you are hearing of something going on, you want to perk up those ears, make sure that antenna is up, that you have turned to a good news source, whether it be a vetted Facebook account, for example, either ours or a police department or fire department. We have trained professional PIOs, public information officers, that manage those pages. We only put out the information that's accurate and confirmed from the boots on the ground. So sometimes it might take a few extra minutes, but it's worth it because we know that what's actually going on. Then we have the part where you either are preparing your kit to be by the door or actually moving it into your car in case there is an evacuation needed. Just making sure that you're set to go. So it's just like when you're a kid. You're ready, you're gonna get set, and then you're off when we say go. We don't want people to wait. We don't want them to think that they'll get another chance, because that might be the only warning we get to send out.
So tell us about the go part. You kind of talked about it there. Go, is it self-explanatory? Get out of here, it's time to go.
Listen to the first responders' directions, because sometimes we might direct you in a way that you're not used to or familiar with, but that's because we're trying to get equipment into an area, so we might have you go a different route, but go. Listen to what they're telling you, listen to the route of traffic, get the kids, get the pets. Definitely take the pets, by the way. In the old day, previous life, they used to say, leave the pets. No, take the pets. We want you to take the pets. Their blankets, their food, their leashes, crates, whatever they need, medicine. Don't forget the medicine. And go. They will direct you either to a shelter location or to a safe evacuation location in case you know it's going to be a short-term thing or a long-term thing.
Makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. I know we're getting towards the end of our time here. Is there any last thoughts, important items that you feel like that we should know here?
I talk to kids. And actually, let me just back up a little bit. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your family members, but talk to your kids. It doesn't have to be a scary story to let them understand that stuff does happen in our world. But the more they understand that this could happen, and the more they feel prepared for it, say, hey, get them involved in making that kit. they have some control at that point, and if they get an assignment like, Johnny, your job is to get the kit, Sally, your job is to get the blankets, Susie, you're going to get the leashes and the dog. Everybody has a job to play in that disaster evacuation. It makes it go a lot smoother, and they're less scared, is what the studies have been finding. So we really want people to just communicate, both at home, but also with their friends and their neighbors.
That makes sense, and thank you for sharing that. The ability to be able to educate our community on what to do. It's interesting, like you said, the fires that have occurred here, we had 2 of the largest in Arizona's history happen here, and pretty quick to forget. I see those that retain that information, that are prepared, that are doing this ready, set, go preparation, and others that it'll never happen again. It's not going to come. And so continue to have these conversations, understanding how to be prepared, all very important, and all something that you and your team do so well with. Thank you for your partnership. Thank you for working with the citizens of Navajo County in helping us to be prepared for the fire season that's coming up. We want to thank you again for joining us at Navajo County Connection. Until we meet again next time, this is your host, Jason Whiting, and we really appreciate having our guest, Catrina Jenkins, with us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.